Draw a line from the southeastern coast of Florida, out to Bermuda, and down to Puerto Rico. You've just outlined a patch of the North Atlantic Ocean, whose actual area fluctuates anywhere between 500,000 and 1.5 million square miles, depending on who you ask. Over the centuries, this loosely defined patch of water has gained a fierce reputation as the deadliest geographic anomaly on Earth. According to the lore, it has quietly swallowed 20 planes, 50 ships, and hundreds of people. The stories that survive all share the exact same chilling details. Massive vessels vanish entirely, there are rarely distress calls sent, and search parties find absolutely no floating wreckage or debris in the water. Without fixed boundaries on an official map, and completely lacking physical evidence of these disasters, an informational void formed. Nature abhors a vacuum, and human imagination rushed in to fill it, turning a heavily trafficked patch of the Atlantic into a legendary conspiracy. The modern obsession with this area took root in March 1918. The USS Cyclops, a 542-foot Navy cargo ship loaded with 10,000 tons of manganese ore and over 300 men, vanished on its way to Baltimore. A vessel of that industrial scale and weight simply disappeared without ever sending a wireless call for help. The event became the largest non-combat loss of life in U.S. naval history. President Woodrow Wilson remarked at the time, "Only God and the sea know what happened to the great ship." Decades later, in December 1945, a squadron of 5 Navy torpedo bombers, known as Flight 19, took off from Florida for a practice run. The flight leader radioed the control tower, reporting extreme navigational confusion and a malfunctioning compass, before all 5 planes disappeared. That very same day, a massive search and rescue plane with a 13-man crew launched to locate Flight 19. It, too, vanished without a trace. Every missing hull and downed aircraft triggered massive searches of the ocean floor. By treating the area as a continuous physical crime scene, investigators spent decades looking down at the sand, entirely missing the actual math of the ocean. Before anyone thought to zoom out and look at the macro-level data, the prevailing strategy was to find a single, complex scientific explanation for all these tragedies. The primary suspect was the compass. Navigators often pointed to the fact that this specific patch of the Atlantic was one of the few places on Earth where a compass points to true north rather than magnetic north, a variance known as magnetic declination. This perfectly aligned path where true and magnetic north match is called the agonic line. But tracking over the last century shows that this line has an average velocity of about 0.2 degrees per year, steadily drifting westward entirely out of the Bermuda Triangle and into the Gulf of Mexico. Even when the line did run through the Atlantic, correcting for magnetic declination is a standard part of route charting. Assuming that highly experienced commercial pilots and Navy captains simply forgot how to read a map, drastically underestimates basic maritime competency. When navigation didn't hold up, researchers looked deeper. A modern hypothesis suggested massive pockets of methane gas in ocean sediments were violently bursting upward, reducing water density so fast that ships instantly sink. Exploding methane craters and magnetic drifts are real, documented geological phenomena, but aggressively trying to attach them to this specific grid of water granted unearned scientific weight to a mystery originally popularized by a pulp magazine. The actual answer to the mystery only emerges when you stop looking at individual anecdotes and start looking at the shipping logs. This chart shows a high-density global scatterplot of marine casualties, covering over 150,000 incident records stretching from 1982 to 2015. If we zoom in and isolate the boundaries of the Bermuda Triangle, we find exactly 361 casualties. That accounts for barely 4% of total global incidents over 3 decades. Looking at this bar chart built from 2021 Lloyd's List shipping data, we can see 8,634 boats safely passed through the Bermuda Triangle that year. Out of all that traffic, only 2 vessels experienced any type of casualty. The Sky tells the exact same story. Examining the National Transportation Safety Board's aviation accident database reveals that almost all regional plane accidents occur during routine takeoffs and landings in the Bahamas, not evaporating at cruising altitude. The danger of disappearing in this stretch of water is exactly 90 times lower than the global average. the deadly vortex, never existed outside of the human mind. So, if the area is statistically safe, what explains the very real loss of the USS Cyclops or the pilots of Flight 19? This corner of the Atlantic sits directly in the crosshairs of one of the planet's most active and brutal hurricane corridors. Florida alone is hit by more devastating storms than any other U.S. state. Between the swift, turbulent currents of the Gulf Stream and sudden tropical cyclones, the simplest explanation is usually the correct one. From 16th century Spanish galleons to mid-20th century bombers, most losses came down to tragic human error colliding with overwhelming weather. Today, the Bermuda Triangle doesn't even break the top 10 most dangerous global waterways. Annual shipping losses are vastly outpaced in regions like the Black Sea and the South China Sea. The survival of the Bermuda Triangle myth is a masterclass in confirmation bias. We cataloged every tragic accident inside an arbitrary shape, while completely ignoring the millions of ships that sailed straight through it without a scratch. It is entirely a human reflex to invent terrifying monsters, often just to hide the fact that the real world is, thankfully, fabulously unremarkable.